Attorney General Pam Bondi just confirmed the FBI executed a search warrant at the home of a Washington Post journalist. Bondi says the journalist was, quote, obtaining and reporting classified and illegally leaked information from the Pentagon contractor, who she adds is currently behind bars. Hannah Natanson, who covers the federal workforce, was at her home when this search was executed. The Post says she has been part of the publication's most high-profile and sensitive coverage during the first year of the second Trump administration.
Federal judge just delivered blow to Pam Bondi that could expose entire Epstein cover-up, and she's absolutely panicking trying to figure out how to escape. Judge Richard Berman issued order demanding DOJ provide complete accounting of every Epstein file they possess and explain exactly why they haven't released them as law requires. Not polite request, not suggestion Bondi can ignore with vague bureaucratic double talk, direct judicial order requiring transparency about what DOJ is hiding. And if her explanations don't satisfy court, if she continues stonewalling like she's been doing with Congress, judge made clear contempt is coming, sanctions are coming, judicial enforcement that could force release of files Bondi has been desperately trying to keep buried. Because Epstein Files Transparency Act required release of essentially all unclassified records by December 19th. That deadline passed. DOJ released less than 1% of materials with heavy redactions. Bondi thought she could violate law without consequences, thought her position protected her, thought nobody could force compliance. But Berman just told her time's up. Either provide full accounting and start releasing files or face contempt for obstructing transparency law Trump himself signed. But real quick before we get into this, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built John Brown Show to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe, because you might think you are, but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what actually happened, because Berman's order isn't just procedural formality. This is accountability mechanism that forces Bondi to go on record about cover-up. Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed with bipartisan support, signed by Trump in November 2025 with big public show about transparency. Law required Attorney General to release all unclassified records, documents, communications, investigative materials related to Jeffrey Epstein, his associates, connected entities by December 19th. Clear statutory deadline. Comprehensive requirement. Release everything that isn't classified. Simple mandate that any competent attorney general could follow if they wanted to. Share this video with everyone you know, because here's what Bondi actually did when deadline arrived. Released less than 1% of materials. Tiny fraction of what law required. And even that minimal release came with heavy redactions, making much of it useless. So law says release essentially everything. Bondi releases almost nothing heavily redacted. That's not compliance, that's not good faith effort. That's deliberate violation of statutory requirement. That's Attorney General deciding she's above law and can ignore deadlines Congress set and President signed. Think about what that reveals about Bondi's priorities. She's not protecting national security because law already exempted classified materials. She's not protecting survivors because law included privacy protections for victims. She's protecting powerful people named in those files, protecting Epstein's associates and clients who don't want their involvement exposed, protecting Trump, who's mentioned in files and doesn't want details public. That's what this cover-up is about. Not legitimate reasons, protecting elite criminals from accountability. And Bondi's been stonewalling Congress too. Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna wrote the transparency law. Republican and Democrat working together on bipartisan legislation. They've demanded explanations for why deadline was missed. Why less than 1% got released? Why redactions are so extensive? Bondi won't give straight answers, dodges questions at hearings, provides vague bureaucratic responses that don't explain anything. She thought Congress couldn't force her to comply. Thought she could run out clock and hope issue would fade. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show, because that's where Berman's order becomes devastating. Judge isn't playing political games, isn't accepting vague excuses. Ordered DOJ to explain by specific date what Epstein-related materials it possesses, what grand jury materials exist, what discovery materials exist, what investigative files exist, complete inventory of everything DOJ has, and explain how department plans to protect survivor privacy while releasing materials law requires. That forces Bondi to either admit what she's been hiding or lie to federal court. And here's why that's trap Bondi can't escape. If she admits DOJ possesses vast trove of unreleased Epstein materials, she's confessing to violating transparency law by withholding them. If she claims DOJ doesn't have much beyond what was released, she's either lying, which court can discover through other means, or admitting DOJ conducted inadequate investigation of Epstein network. Either way, she loses. Either she's covering up or she's incompetent. No good option when judge demands answers under oath. Berman's timing matters too. Order came after DOJ filed motion about unsealing certain grand jury materials. DOJ came to court asking for something. Judge used that as opportunity to flip script. Said, fine, you want court's help with grand jury materials? First, you explain to court what you possess and why you're not releasing it. Turned DOJ's own motion into accountability mechanism. Made their request for judicial action into requirement that they disclose what they're hiding. Think about what happens next if Bondi's response is inadequate. If she provides vague explanations that don't actually account for non-compliance, if she tries to hide behind secrecy rules that don't actually apply, judge can find that DOJ is obstructing transparency law, can hold department in contempt, can order specific documents released, can impose sanctions until compliance occurs. Federal judges have enormous power to enforce their orders, and Berman just signaled he's willing to use it. And Bondi's facing pressure from Congress at the same time. Massey and Khanna aren't just complaining. They're drafting inherent contempt resolution that would fine Bondi personally for every day she doesn't release files. Daily fines that add up fast. Inherent contempt is congressional power that bypasses normal courts. Congress can impose fines directly without waiting for judicial process, without needing DOJ to prosecute its own attorney general. Direct enforcement mechanism that hasn't been used since 1930s, but lawmakers are reviving specifically to punish Bondi's cover-up. Here's why inherent contempt threat is so powerful. Normal contempt requires DOJ to prosecute, but DOJ won't prosecute its own boss. Court contempt takes time, appeals, delays, process that can stretch for years. Inherent contempt bypasses all that. Congress acts directly, imposes fines immediately, creates mounting financial pressure every single day. Bondi continues violating law. That's accountability she can't dodge through legal maneuvering. And this is bipartisan effort, which makes it stronger. Massey is Republican from Kentucky. Khanna is Democrat from California. They co-wrote transparency law together. Both furious that Bondi is violating statute they crafted, their joint criticism isn't partisan attack. It's authors of law demanding their legislation be followed. When Republican and Democrat agree Attorney General is breaking law, that's a powerful statement that transcends party politics. Share this video with everyone you know because Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called Bondi's minimal release blatant cover-up. Those are strong words from Senate leadership. Cover-up means intentional concealment, means Bondi isn't struggling with compliance. She's deliberately hiding information. Public has legal right to see. Schumer backed legal action if Bondi doesn't start following law. That's top Senate Democrat saying judicial and congressional enforcement should proceed against sitting Attorney General. Think about why Bondi is so desperate to keep these files hidden. What's in them that's worth violating federal law? Worth facing contempt from federal judge? Worth getting fined daily by Congress? Files must contain information about powerful people, names of Epstein associates, details of crimes, evidence of cover-ups, things that would destroy reputations and potentially lead to prosecutions if released. That's only explanation for Bondi's willingness to break law rather than comply. And Trump's connection to Epstein makes this even more suspicious. Trump flew on Epstein's plane, partied with Epstein for years, called him terrific guy. Epstein had Trump's contact information. Photos show them together at multiple events. Trump is mentioned in Epstein files. And now Trump's Attorney General is refusing to release those files despite law. Trump himself signed requiring their release. Connection is obvious. Bondi is protecting Trump by keeping his Epstein connections buried. Bondi stonewalled questions at congressional hearing about Trump's mentions in files. Wouldn't confirm or deny. Wouldn't provide details. Wouldn't explain redactions. Just dodged and deflected. That tells you everything. If files didn't incriminate Trump, Bondi would release them and clear him. Her refusal to release means files contain damaging information she's hiding. Information that would hurt Trump politically and possibly legally. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show, because here's what makes Berman's order so dangerous for this cover-up. Judge is forcing DOJ to create record, to document what they have and why they're not releasing it. That record can be used by Congress in inherent contempt proceedings, can be used by advocacy groups in lawsuits, can be used by journalists investigating cover-up, can be used by prosecutors if crimes are revealed. Every explanation Bondi provides creates evidence that can be used against her. And if Bondi lies to judge about what DOJ possesses, that's separate crime. False statements to federal court, obstruction of justice. Attorney General lying to judge about Epstein files would be massive scandal leading to her own prosecution, so she's trapped between admitting cover-up or committing new crimes to hide it. No escape from accountability Berman is imposing, and Massey and Khanna also requested special master be appointed to take control of release process. That would remove Bondi from equation entirely. Independent official would review files and release them according to law's requirements. DOJ wouldn't control process anymore, couldn't continue obstructing. Special master would ensure compliance regardless of Bondi's wishes. That's acknowledgement that she can't be trusted to follow law voluntarily. Think about what special master appointment would mean. Every file Bondi has been hiding gets reviewed by independent party. Every redaction gets evaluated to determine if it's legitimate or covering up. Every decision to withhold gets scrutinized, and then materials get released as law requires. Without Bondi's interference, without Trump's protection, just straight compliance with transparency statute. That's nightmare scenario for everyone who wants Epstein connections kept secret. And victims deserve this transparency. Epstein abused countless women and girls. His network enabled those crimes. His associates participated or looked away. Survivors have been demanding accountability for years. Release of files could finally provide answers about who was involved, who knew, who helped, who profited from trafficking operation. Bondi's cover-up denies victims the justice transparency law promised them. Massey framed inherent contempt as seeking justice for victims. Not political combat, not partisan attack. Justice for people Epstein harmed. Release of files serves their interests by exposing full scope of network that victimized them. Bondi's obstruction serves interests of perpetrators and enablers who don't want exposure. That's whose side Attorney General is on when she violates transparency law. Khanna called Bondi part of corrupt system, the Epstein class that people are sick of. That framing connects file suppression to broader elite impunity. Powerful people escape consequences while regular Americans face full force of law. Epstein died in custody before trial. Maxwell got light sentence. Associates never got charged. And now files that could expose network are being buried by Attorney General. That's corruption people recognize and hate. Share this video with everyone you know, because timing of Berman's order and congressional contempt resolution creates two-front squeeze Bondi can't escape. Judge demanding answers from one direction, Congress threatening fines from another direction, both enforcement tracks independent of each other, both creating consequences. Bondi has to satisfy court's order while also either releasing files or facing daily fines from Congress. Can't ignore one to focus on other. Both require action, and this isn't situation where Bondi can appeal her way out. Berman's order requires response by specific date. Inherent contempt would impose fines immediately once passed. No lengthy appeals process. No years of delays. Quick enforcement creating immediate consequences. That's designed to force compliance instead of allowing Bondi to run out clock, hoping political situation changes. Think about what this means for Trump administration. President signed transparency law publicly, made show of supporting release. Then his attorney general violates that law and stonewalls enforcement. Either Trump's support was fake or he's lost control of his own administration. Either he lied about transparency or Bondi is defying him. Neither explanation looks good. Both undermine his credibility on Epstein issue. And Republican senators are watching this. Some already concerned about Trump's conduct, some already voted against his war powers. If Bondi gets held in contempt by federal judge and fined by Congress for covering up Epstein files, more Republicans might distance themselves, might decide protecting Trump's Epstein connections isn't worth political cost, might break from administration over this issue. Mike Johnson already can't control House, already dealing with discharge petitions forcing votes he doesn't want. If Congress moves forward with inherent contempt against Bondi, Johnson faces another crisis he can't manage. Another situation where Republican members might join Democrats in enforcement action. Another demonstration that Trump's grip on party is weakening. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show because bottom line is this. Judge Richard Berman ordered Pam Bondi to provide complete accounting of what Epstein files DOJ possesses and explain why they haven't been released as law requires. Bondi must respond by specific date with detailed explanations. If response is inadequate, judge can hold DOJ in contempt and impose sanctions. This creates judicial enforcement mechanism for transparency law Bondi has been violating. At same time, Representatives Massey and Khanna are drafting inherent contempt resolution that would fine Bondi daily until she releases files. Bipartisan effort between Republican and Democrat who wrote the law. Daily fines creating mounting pressure. Congressional enforcement that bypasses courts and acts directly. Second track of accountability operating independently of judicial track. Bondi violated Epstein Files Transparency Act by releasing less than 1% of required materials with heavy redactions. Missed statutory deadline. Stonewalled Congress. Refused to explain why Trump signed law isn't being followed. Now facing consequences from both federal judge and Congress. Two-front pressure she can't escape through political connections or legal maneuvering. Files she's hiding contain information about powerful people, about Epstein's network, about Trump's connections. That's why cover-up is worth violating federal law, why Bondi risks contempt and fines rather than release, because exposure would destroy reputations and end careers of people she's protecting. But judge and Congress are forcing her to choose between continued cover-up with severe consequences or compliance with law. Berman's order and congressional contempt represent genuine accountability mechanisms, not empty threats, not political theater. Real enforcement with teeth. Judge can hold DOJ in contempt. Congress can impose daily fines. Both create consequences Bondi can't ignore. Both demand action, not excuses. This is moment where Bondi either releases files as law requires or faces punishment from both branches for obstruction. And victims deserve this transparency. Survivors of Epstein's trafficking deserve to know full scope of network that harmed them, deserve to see files that might provide answers and accountability. Bondi's cover-up denies them justice transparency law promised. Enforcement efforts serve their interests by demanding release of materials that could expose everyone involved in Epstein operation. Trump signed this law publicly, made commitment to transparency. His attorney general is violating that commitment and law he signed. Either his support was fraud or he's lost control. Either way, it's failure. And now, both federal judge and bipartisan congressional coalition are demanding accountability, demanding Bondi follow law, demanding files be released as statute requires. This story continues developing. Stay tuned.